It is Beyond the Box Score 2.0 version. The boys are back.
Little blast from the past,
Star-Spangled Banter. Connor, you go first.
This is going to sound completely crazy.
Win me a few more games before you start dancing. That's all I ask.
That is the difference between being good and being great.
How about that segue right there, baby?
Forward bounce, just get it out of here.
You like that?
And they let the team down on Sunday. Last call.
Good evening and welcome to Beyond the Box Score here on a Tuesday, however you may be listening or watching. Connor Priester and Cole Johnson. A lot on the plate for you today. A lot going on in the NFL. Wild card weekend. It was a fun one, Connor. Last night, college football national title. Alabama coming out on top. Nick Saban, the 7th national title. You know, Connor doesn't watch college football, but luckily there's this thing called the wild card, the NFL playoffs this weekend, so we can talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, I just got to say, this year, in terms of playoff football, in terms of a fan standpoint, it's different because the Bills won the AFC East, and you kind of feel more invested in the playoffs. Last year, it was just kind of like, hey, we made it, let's see what happens, but playoff football is just heart attack after heart attack after heart attack. I don't know if I can even put up with one more, let alone if they win again, more weeks of playoff football, because that game with the Colts was just absolutely insane. So many different ways that it could have turned out, especially in the end. I mean, there was the one drive to close out the first half where you got review after review after review. And then, with the fumble not getting called a fumble, to trying to end on a Hail Mary, which you all know that the Bills, it's been their nightmare all year, and you could have called it even their turning point of the season as well. But it was, and even the other games too. I mean, a lot of them kind of didn't go the way that I predicted with my bold takes, but then also some of them kind of went the way that we all kind of expected it to be. But it was just a great weekend of football for sure.
Yeah, and it is, the NFL playoffs are fun no matter what. And you said you're more invested this year, so we have a lot more coming up on that. We're going to recap all the games, but like you said, Connor, I'm just curious, being the Bills finally in the playoffs and having a chance to win something. You said you're more invested. I mean, I feel like I'm always invested. I'm so into it. I got nervous this weekend. I felt my stomach turning during the Baltimore and Tennessee game because I was so into that one and wanting Baltimore to come on top because I picked them. But, for you and adding the Bills in there, how different is that? Just, actually being a part of it and not just watching the playoffs just to watch it.
I think the reason why it feels different this year is because also I wasn't able to watch the whole wildcard game last year with the Texans because I actually had to work for all of the first half, and I probably got home a quarter of the way through the third quarter. There's probably around like 9 or 10 minutes left in the third quarter when I was finally first able to turn the game on. So it was. I feel like since I was able to watch the whole entire game, see everything that happened. I mean, because basically I just saw a collapse last year, and it was more of just like well, damn. It's like I didn't get to see the whole first half. I mean, also there's just definitely just that different feeling because there's we've seen how dominant the Bills have been this year. So last year there really wasn't expectations. I mean, the saying went in the locker room was playoff caliber. It's like, okay, let's just get to the playoffs. That'd be great. Now it's like they're a Super Bowl caliber team, and there's expectations. And when you're expecting a win, and when it's close, and you really never know what's going to happen in the National Football League. I mean, it's more of they've built it as the team, and they've also built it in the community and the fan base. Like we have a winning mentality now. We expect wins, and it's nerve wracking when it seems like it's not going that way.
Yeah. I can understand because I went through that as a kid. The Giants were in the playoffs several times. Now I haven't seen them in the playoffs since 2016, and it was a one and done. So I feel you. But we'll get back to the Bills in a little bit. We got our wild card recap and then a look at the divisional rounds coming up next week. But we wanted to start it off with something here. Typically, we go with our Star-Spangled Banter. We're going to leave it all to Connor this time. He's got something to say regarding that that Pittsburgh and Cleveland game on Sunday night, Connor. So, Star Spangled Banter, what do we got?
So there was a man for a long time that you were in love with that I hated. I wanted nothing to do with him because I thought he was arrogant. I thought his takes were a little arrogant. I thought a lot of the stuff that came out of his mouth was more of just for clickbait rather than actual facts. But you know what? I've grown to like this man. And I think you know who I'm talking about. I'm going to take a page out of his book right now. Steelers Nation. I told you so. I told you. They're a fake team. Should have never been 11-0. Shouldn't ever have been 12-4. And I told you they were going to lose against the Browns. Did I think that they were going to lose like that and get absolutely spanked in the primetime game? No. But did it feel good watching it? Yes. Also because I like the underdog story of the Browns. Who doesn't love a good underdog story? But my problem isn't with me being right. I like being right. It's fun. You get to rub it in a little bit. I get to be a little cocky about it. But when you have a team full of people who are also arrogant and kind of talk a little bit too much when they can't walk the walk, Juju Smith-Schuster dancing on logos, Chase Claypool. But anyway, we're going to backtrack for a minute. One of the best defenses in the league that can win you playoff games. We know defenses can win playoff games for teams all the time, but for the longest time, I've also been saying that they cannot keep relying on the defense because that offense cannot do their part, and that defense is going to snap at some point. And it did. That first half was a total wash. There were so many mistakes on the offensive side of the ball that the defense couldn't keep up. Big Ben is washed. The run game has been a non-factor all year, and it was written in the stars for a first-round exit to the Browns. But again, just not how I expected it. Absolutely embarrassed. The game was over in the first quarter. Actually, this game was lost when Juju made his statement leading up to the game. It's just the Browns. How many times do you have to give another team bulletin board material? From dancing on logos to disrespecting them verbally before a game. I mean, that's just going to piss any team off. Like, you don't need added fuel to a fire that is spreading rapidly with an underdog mentality that is the Browns. Thinking they're already counted out, whole nations against them because they're going to ride the Pittsburgh Steelers because they're 12-4 and because they have this big, mean, scary defense. So they get spanked. They lose what should have been a good, close game that should have wrapped up a nice day of football, but they get absolutely spanked. Chase Claypool comes out with a live stream, and don't get me wrong, Chase Claypool, he had an unbelievable rookie season. You could argue that he was one of the saviors on the offensive side of the ball because Juju and Deontay Johnson had weeks where they were completely irrelevant, and Claypool kind of picked up the slack for what was missing on that offensive side of the ball. Goes on a live stream and says basically, oh, well, we lost to the Browns, but they're going to get clapped next week. Why does that matter? Why the hell does that matter to you? Worry about your own damn team who just embarrassingly lost to those same old Browns. You're a rookie. And the thing that bothers me the most about this is that he is a rookie with a lot of promise in the league. A lot of promise. And as a rookie, and even as a first or second year guy, or as a second or third year guy, you need to earn the respect from everyone else around the league. And I got to tell you, buddy, that is not a way to earn respect. Absolutely not. And it's like it just needs to stop at some point. Just the childish, immature antics by Juju and Claypool, mixed with all the other drama that's surrounding that team. And it's just, it's not setting them up good for the future. Because if Big Ben is under center again next year, they're going to have the same problems. And last but not least, did I mention that Big Ben is also going to be making $41 million next year, the highest in the National Football League? Yeah, good luck with that.
Wow.
And rant.
Well, you said that to me before we started. You gave me a little guessing game as to who the highest paid quarterback would be. And that's, at this point in time, Connor, and you've said it to me before, Pittsburgh needs to move off of Ben Roethlisberger. You can't live in the past. I think it's a problem that the New York Giants had with Eli Manning for a couple of years. It's the nostalgic part of the Pittsburgh Steelers who had Ben Roethlisberger come out of nowhere and lead this team to 2 Super Bowls, lead this franchise to multiple division titles, multiple playoff appearances. But if you look at their track record over the last decade, it seems to end like this every time. This being the biggest collapse we may have seen in NFL history. It's one of the top ones.
Yeah, and social media was ripping apart the Steelers. It was hilarious, and there was a couple tweets I saw. It was like, what is Big Ben doing in this game that Jameis Winston wouldn't do for you? And it showed the stat line. It said how many times did Jameis Winston almost throw 500 yards with 4 touchdowns and also throw 4 picks? And it's like, yeah, but Big Ben went out and he broke the record for most completions in a single game in regular season or postseason history. But yeah, he threw for over 500 yards, but he threw the ball 70 times.
And that was
because he had playing from behind.
And that was because they were behind. So the game was over in the first half. Cleveland went into prevent defense in the second half. They were going to let him throw to Deontay Johnson and Smith-Schuster out of the slot underneath the whole game. That's how you rack up the completions, rack up the yards. If you don't move off Ben Roethlisberger, you said it to me. You texted me about a couple of days ago and said, if they keep Ben Roethlisberger, Mike Tomlin's going to lose his job because they're going to go through the same thing next year. They're going to win a ton of games, and then they're going to fall apart. They're going to have a first-round exit. It's the nostalgic piece that has to go, and they need to start building forward because I think the final 5 weeks of this season are an exact representation of this Pittsburgh team and how they need to move forward because that's what's going to continue. And I feel bad for the guy. I loved watching Big Ben growing up. And he had some tears. He sat on the bench by himself and cried for a few minutes after that loss. And because I think deep down, I think he knows it's coming to an end. So I think this is the perfect opportunity to have a conversation in the front office with Coach Mike Tomlin and figure this thing out and be like, Ben, I think we got to move off of you. Maybe you could stick around for a year and help maybe be a backup and help mold another guy if you really care about this franchise.
Well, that's a $41 million backup quarterback. And if I don't know, man, but I think the most realistic thing that I see happening is he sticks around, and it's going to be a Mike Tomlin decision to make him the starting quarterback. I'm going to stick by this take that I had. It's going to cost Mike Tomlin his job.
Yep. So tough to see. It's tough to see for Big Ben, but after what happened, I think it's clear to see that he's coming to an end, and it's kind of an era of quarterbacks that we grew up watching, Connor. Their careers are coming to an end. It's the new boy show, and it's something I was going to mention later. But if you look at the ages of the starting quarterbacks in the AFC versus the NFC, well, outside of Big Ben, you have Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Baker Mayfield, all picks from the 2017 draft. And then on the NFC side, you have a 43-year-old Tom Brady, a 41-year-old Drew Brees, 37-year-old Aaron Rodgers. It's crazy to see the age difference and what's going to be coming for the next decade that we grew up seeing that's coming to a close. So Big Ben, Phillip Rivers might be the first ones to go after those wild card exits. But with that being said, Connor, let's hop right into our recap of wild card weekend. I mean, the top storyline and something I'm going to get in at the end for the 6 wild card, road teams go in and win on the road. So that's a big part of this weekend. Something that we kind of agreed that would happen. There'd be at least 3. There ended up being 4 with Cleveland. So let's start off with that Cleveland-Pittsburgh game, 48-37. Connor, Pittsburgh set the tone of the game right off in the first play. Botch snap, Marquise Pouncey sends air mails it over Ben Roethlisberger's head into the end zone. James Conner and Ben Roethlisberger kind of looking at each other. You get it. Pick it up. Neither of them grab it. Touchdown, Cleveland. A pick later, Cleveland's up 14-0, and then a 3-and-out capped off by a 6-play, 65-yard drive, touchdown by Kareem Hunt. And that game's over right then. Once it goes 21-0, that game's over. Simply, Pittsburgh wasn't prepared. Ben was way off on his throws. He threw behind guys 2 that were tipped and picked. And Cleveland had something to prove without their head coach on the road. And this is something like the guy you mentioned earlier, Connor, Colin Cowherd, a very good analogy he came up with this yesterday. was that the Cleveland Browns were like teenage kids without their dad at the game, without their parent there. Kevin Stefanski with COVID-19, several other coaches. Their a special teams coach, Mike Prefer, had to step in as the acting head coach. They were without their Pro Bowl right guard, Joel Bitonio. It was like teenage kids becoming responsible. They were groomed all year. They matured throughout the year, and then they were left home by their dad with the house all weekend, and they took care of it. They not only didn't throw a party or go crazy, they took care of it. They cleaned it up, and I as soon as he said that, it clicked, and it's like that's exactly what happened. The maturity of Cleveland this season, and especially in the last 2 weeks, not practicing without a head coach, and they go in there and do that. And simply Pittsburgh ends the season with one of the biggest collapses we've ever seen.
Yeah, and I want to backtrack a bit. So by the time that I was able to actually turn the game on, it was already 14-0, and I was like, holy cow. And by the time I saw the replay of that botched snap, I got to say, I understand you're old. I understand you're brittle. I understand you're 40 or whatever, how old you are. I understand that you've had a laundry list of injuries over your career, especially with, your throwing elbow last year. But Big Ben just screwed over to me, that's his ball that he needs to jump on. It was sitting at his feet, and he backed away from it. That play and literally that whole entire first half could have been prevented if Big Ben just simply falls on the football. I understand he might take a shot, and you don't want your quarterback taking a shot like that, but that is his ball 110%. If you go back and look at the replay, that ball's standing at his feet, and he had probably 2 or 3 different opportunities just to fall on it. And that ball is recovered by Pittsburgh. Maybe they flip the field a little bit with a good punt and play the field position game, and maybe Cleveland doesn't score on the opening drive. We'll never know, but that Big Ben needs to fall on that ball. And it was a completely selfish play, and you got to take one for your team, and it's the playoffs too. You need to take one for your team right there. That's the one thing that really, really, really bothered me about that game. But except for that, I mean, you already mentioned it. He just did not look comfortable throwing the football for the most part in the first half. Just so many times where he was missing wide open receivers. I told you, just Big Ben can't throw the football like he used to.
Yeah, and kind of backing off that whole kids being left home without their parent thing. Another kind of analogy I came up with, Connor, was it's kind of like what I mentioned earlier in the season, heading into that Monday Night Football game, after the Monday Night Football game that they lost against Baltimore in that shootout. I talked about the 4 H's that Kevin Stefanski has, the culture he's built, history, heroes, forgot the other 2. History, heroes, whatever. It was the 4 H's, a culture that he's brought in. And it's kind of like having that awesome teacher at school that has built a culture within its classroom, and you build it with a lot of good students, and they listen to the teacher and they do what they're supposed to do. Teacher goes away for on a conference for a couple of days, and you have a substitute teacher, and they're going to work, they're getting it done, they're continuing what was built prior. And that's exactly what Cleveland did, and Colin Cowherd hit it on the head with the whole parents being away. And just to see how Cleveland has matured, and to go in on the road and score 48 points, put up 35 in the first half, and make that game over in the first 30 minutes of that game, it was incredible. And it kind of screwed me over a little bit because Connor, I had Pittsburgh in that game. I could have gone 6 for 6 on the weekend, would have cashed in on a bet, and that happened.
Yeah, this is the one game that I got you on. So
yeah. Rough end to the weekend. And that's actually, as we go through this, Connor, you and I had all the same picks on Saturday. We had all different picks on Sunday. So that was interesting. So we'll go into that first Sunday game. Let's shift to the next upset, if you will, a road team winning. Number 5 seeded Baltimore, beating Tennessee in Tennessee. I mean, right from the start, it looked all Tennessee. Opening drive, an incredible catch in the end zone by A.J. Brown to set the tone. Tennessee gets the ball back, goes up 10-0 early. And then here comes the narrative that Lamar Jackson can't win a playoff game, can't come from behind. He's 0-2 in the playoffs, 0-6 when trailing by 10 or more. But they turned it around. Baltimore gets a few stops on defense. They hold Derrick Henry to 40 yards rushing, and then they just completely flip that and dominate their rushing game. 236 rushing yards between Lamar Jackson, J.K. Dobbins, and Gus Edwards to Tennessee's 51. That was the factor in this game. Tennessee could not run the ball. Baltimore got stops, got off the field, gave Lamar Jackson the football, and they were able to run all over the place. And then Lamar was able to close it out with his feet. Smart play, stayed in bounds, something he wasn't able to do in his first 2 years. And Baltimore gets the win on the road.
Yeah, Ryan Tannehill, actually, I texted you. I was like, if Tannehill keeps looking like this, the game's going to be over, because Tannehill looked really, really good throwing the ball. And I know that they're stopping Derrick Henry. But like, when you prepare for Tennessee, you prepare for Derrick Henry. And Baltimore did an excellent job of doing that. And then they just made the adjustment and really kind of stifled Tennessee on offense. And really wasn't anticipating as low score of a game, but I was wrong here. I thought Tennessee was going to be able to prevail, but it's Baltimore and Buff this week. So Baltimore moving on.
Yeah, and how about that? How about the end of that? The pick by Marcus Peters, and it seemed like the entire Ravens sideline ran out there and stomped all over the Tennessee logo. Coming back from a matchup they had earlier in the year when Tennessee was dancing on their logo pregame, led to some words between the coaches and players. This was their revenge on that, being, "Hey, you're going home. We came here and won this." How do you feel? How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I also don't like the fact that they all ran off the field. They didn't shake hands after the game either. And I think that, especially in playoffs, it's a tradition. It's a sportsmanship thing. I would also have to argue that too, hockey is probably one of the most intense sports, especially where things get very, very chippy. You see a lot of intense actions that can make it where there would be bad blood after the game. But they have one of the greatest traditions in all of sports of the handshake line after a playoff series. And I think, to me, it's just something that you do. Obviously, they're not going out there and they're going to shake everyone's hand, because that's 50 guys you have to worry about, and then coaching staff. But to me, I don't like it. Again, it's extremely it's ignorant. I think it's just something that you do out of respect for your opponent and respect for the competition.
Yeah. So a lot of bad blood between the two. Like you said, Baltimore was walking off the field with 20 seconds left. It was pretty interesting to see. But shifting over to the NFC, and then the next team that won on the road, a 6-3 matchup, it was the LA Rams taking down Seattle. Everyone was skeptical about what was happening with LA going into that game at quarterback, because Jared Goff just had surgery 9 days before. It was ruled that he wasn't going to start. John Wolford got the start. He started in week 17 in a Rams win. But he gets hurt, dives on the ground, gets a hit from Jamal Adams in the head, gets a stinger in his neck. He's out. Jared Goff takes over with a broken thumb. And it went as expected. The guy couldn't even grip a football normally. If you saw the ball come out of his hand, the ball was wobbling every time. But the way LA was able to use their defense to dominate that game and win up front, and then make Jared Goff do as less as possible and just hand the ball off to Cam Akers, that game was won at the line of scrimmage, hands down, because LA was able to control on defense and control on offensive side and let Cam Akers work. 28 carries, 131 yards, and a touchdown for the rookie. He's going to be a stud. And, they limited it, so Goff only threw when he had to, and he made one touchdown play on a great play action rollout. And just simply, Connor, we've been kind of high on Seattle, up and down all year, but something tragically happened to their offense in the last half of the season, the last quarter. I don't know what happened. Russ wasn't the same. O-line struggled badly, and the run game was non-existent even when Chris Carson came back healthy. We thought that was going to help that offense excel even more, because there's parts in that season where they were dominating on offense but had no running game. You get back Chris Carson healthy, and the offense just it went opposite of what we thought.
Yeah, and it's a shame too, because I mentioned it last week. Like, I was riding the Russ Wilson is my MVP right now for, I think it was through the first 6-7 weeks, and I was like, Russell Wilson is the NFL's MVP right now. It should not be up for debate, and they just fell over. I can't even think of any other way to put it. They just fell over. There was no spark. There was nothing there. And don't get me wrong. Like, we know the Rams. Like, we know they're a really good football team. We know they're solid on defense. But, I thought too that the Seahawks could have been that team that maybe they ended the season off maybe not as obviously where they wanted to and how they wanted to, but definitely thought they were going to be one of those teams that could really just turn it around, flip the switch for playoffs. And it was just the same old Seahawks that we saw in the second half of the season.
Yeah. So the Rams won that 30-23. And now we move on to the fourth road team that won. This was Tampa Bay, the 5 seed winning in Washington. I think it was a closer game than a lot of people expected. Given the gap in the roster between Tampa, if you look at Tampa Bay on paper, Washington on paper, especially on the offensive side of things, you thought Tampa Bay would run away with this one. Washington only winning 7 games to win the NFC East. Tampa Bay didn't dominate, and they really struggled on defense at times against Taylor Heinicke. And props to that man. And you texted me during this saying, who needs a quarterback next year? Give this guy a shot. He's playing for a shot, and maybe even in Washington. He played tough. He was relentless for all 60 minutes. He put his heart out on the field. He gave his team a chance to win in an improbable game for Washington. I mean, I think he gained a lot of respect, not only in the locker room, but in the national, in the media and the fan aspect of things, because he gave it all. And it wasn't the prettiest for Tampa Bay. I think their offense did what we expected. You would have thought you'd seen better out of their defensive side of things, but it's a win on the road in the playoffs, and it's enough to move on. And that's all you can really do week to week. And Tampa Bay wins it by 8.
Yeah, he impressed the hell out of me. I mean, not only was it just being able to, just actually throw the ball, but be able to throw the ball with anticipation. That corner route that he threw for a touchdown, that's a big league throw. And to be able to throw it perfectly where it's avoiding coverage, and also where it gives your receiver a chance to get both feet in bounds while maintaining possession. That and the other thing that was just crazy to see from basically a no-name quarterback was his pocket awareness and to be able to evade pressure. There were so many times where he looked like, I don't want to overreact here, but like from all angles, being able to start jumping to his right and then make a quick adjustment, bounce back, and then jump up into the pocket, be able to get out, scramble, gain yardage. It was like an everyday, like high-end level quarterback at some points, where he was being able to get away from a sack and turn a negative into a positive. And that was the part that I was just watching. I was like, who is this guy? Because it was, I'm not going to say elite, but it was just outstanding the way that he played. And to be able to wear his heart on his sleeve like that, and to be intense, and to almost kind of show people that he could have that it factor with like how he played, and just to be able to play that competitive, and to have that much heart, and to go out and give his team a chance, and almost basically go toe to toe with the best ever do it in Tom Brady. I mean, you can't say anything more about Heinicke. He played his ass off. It's fantastic.
Yeah, great job by him. Love to see the heart. Love it. You gotta love it. But Tampa Bay comes out on top. They will head to New Orleans for their third matchup this season, and in the wild card game that took place in New Orleans, Connor, New Orleans Saints coming out on top, 21-9 over Chicago. It was an ugly game. Not the ugliest. We've seen worse by far. But that was one of those games where you waited all night for New Orleans to blow it open, but they never did. They never turned that corner, and they kept Chicago in the game. And Chicago only had 1 first down in that entire game, Connor. I don't even know how that's possible. They had 1 first down. We do have to say this. There was a huge drop in the end zone by Wims. They did a trick play, a reverse to Mitch Trubisky, dropped a dime, wide open. Wims drops it. That was a turning point. I think New Orleans still wins this game, no doubt. But that could have been a little momentum swing. It could have gotten Chicago in a bit of a rhythm. Instead, they had to punt after that. The bottom line is Trubisky just doesn't have that it factor. I've been against him his whole career. I still can't get over the fact that the Bears took him at number 2 when there's other guys on the board like Deshaun Watson. he doesn't have the effect that all these great quarterbacks in the league have. You know, he may be able to string some wins together. He did this year after he got benched for Nick Foles, came back in for Nick Foles, and they won some games to make the playoffs. But it's going to be a thing where if he gets a good defense, they might win 8, 9 games a year, sneak into a wild card like they did this year. But that's it. That's their ceiling with Mitch Trubisky. If you're going to pay him, he's got to play better. And, you know, that was the turning point, was the drop. And yeah, Connor, the Saints, I think the Saints needed to show something a little bit more in that game with Tampa Bay coming to town next week.
Yeah, and I told you before the show too that I completely was on board with that. I know it was so early in the first half, but that drop by Wims was 110% the turning point. Because you complete that, you never know what's going to happen. And again, maybe I just got to stop, getting so high on quarterbacks early in the game, because again, I texted you, I was like, Mr. Trubisky looks really good right now, and then they just fell apart again. And I think it was the first 2 drives, he actually looked very, very good throwing the ball. They couldn't really get anything going with Montgomery early. The Saints had a great answer for him, but this was my upset of the week, and this is where I went wrong. And it did look like it could have been a close game, and it definitely was not what we anticipated. I mean, maybe what you anticipated, but I thought it wouldn't be an absolute snooze fest, but it was a snooze fest. Really didn't put on a good show for Nickelodeon either. Not as much slime as some people would want.
Yeah, would have been a nice game to have a shootout. A lot of slime everywhere. But speaking of that, it was I turned it over there to check it out for a few minutes. It was pretty interesting especially for some kids who wanted to watch it.
I actually watched the majority of the game on Nickelodeon. I'm not gonna lie, just because I wanted to see what almost like an entire broadcast would be, where it's trying to teach the younger generation football while also kind of catering to the people that also understand football, if that makes sense. So what's his name from Nate Burleson was the color guy.
Yep.
And he actually he did a really good job. He was super, like, his personality, like how he's like that super energetic guy on Good Morning Football. He was just like that, but then he was also like was explaining it where people could understand it. So I mean, it was super good, especially to grow the game. I think if the younger generations who haven't really gotten into football yet turn that game on, I think they definitely probably would have understood it definitely a lot better than if it was on regular cable television, obviously.
Yeah.
So I just think it was a good idea.
Yeah, and a great job play-by-play by a very young talent in Noah Eagle, who's the son of Ian Eagle. If you didn't know, you could the voice is just incredible. He's only, I believe, 24, maybe 25 years old. He just graduated from Newhouse at Syracuse last year. So
really,
in 2019 he just graduated. So he's already in the biz. So he's got his father's genes in him. He's a great guy, and they did a great job in that game. But on to the last one. I saved this one for last, Connor. Buffalo and Indianapolis. One of the only 2 games that went the way that Vegas thought it would go. The home team winning, and that's Buffalo taking down Indy. It was a very too close for comfort. I think for you, for one, because it made you sweat at the end. For me, I thought it was too close. Indy played a perfect game. Hands down, they played what they had to do to win that game. I don't think Indy could have played it any better to win that game. They just fell short at the end. Credit to Buffalo for holding on. They won the battle on the final drive, and I think a huge part of that was they had a big bend but don't break moments that saved them on the defensive side. Indy played a perfect game. It was a great offensive plan by Frank Reich. They were able to run the ball. They won the battle in the trenches for the most part at the line of scrimmage. But the difference in this game was what you'd all expect. Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs putting on their Superman capes and leading Buffalo to that win. That was the sole difference, was Josh Allen and his connection with Stephon Diggs, being able to find him whenever they need him. And, that touchdown that they had that put him up 11, you thought that was the game. I think I texted you, you texted me, we both said ball game. Let Indy back into it. But those were the differences, was Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs, and that's about it. Just a great game, though.
Yeah, I think the thing that surprised not only me, but a lot of people, and also what kind of irritated a lot of people as well, was Buffalo tried to go with a lot of the QB design runs that we were used to seeing in Josh Allen's first and second year. We haven't seen it much this year because he's become more of a, they rely on the arm of Josh Allen rather than his legs like they did in his first 2 years. And I think it's something that you're also going to see this upcoming week with Baltimore as well, especially because with Zach Moss going down, and they haven't really been able to establish a run game all year. And it's you're really now playing week to week, doing whatever it takes to win. And I think you're going to see a lot more of those Josh Allen designed runs again. But were there some times that they probably shouldn't have been called? Yeah, I think there were a few too many, and a few that were in really weird situations that I didn't agree with. I don't think it was Brian Dable's best game as a play caller, but I definitely think that with the way they went about attacking Indy's defense was really good. That I know they were playing zone for the majority of the game, and then they actually they were playing cover one, and they actually got that matchup with Stephon Diggs one-on-one on that touchdown. And that was a play that was made at the line of scrimmage. And so just to see the maturity and the growth from Josh Allen in that standpoint too, and then even bringing it into the playoffs, it's fantastic. But I mean, it was, like I said, heart attack on heart attack. The thing that, because I actually didn't even ask, at least I don't think we talked about this. I don't know how you don't call that a fumble at the end of the game. Oh. And if the Bills would have lost like that, I don't know what I would have been able to do with myself.
Yeah.
Because first, the challenge took forever. Second, well, the booth review. Leading up, actually, to get the booth review took forever. It took a Sean McDermott timeout when the play was about to happen. Mm-hmm. And you got all these different angles. And then there's one angle that clearly showed that Pascal's knee was off the ground when Jordan Poyer made contact. And I thought that angle would seal it. And I was already celebrating, but I was like, deep down, I know that this is going to be held up just because of the situation. It is close. It's the NFL playoffs, and it's Buffalo.
Yeah.
I just knew something.
Scared for you. I was worried for you and the entire Bills Mafia, because that would have been the most heartbreaking way to lose a game if the Colts were able to score and win that, because it would have been something where you could look back and be like, if all they have to do is overturn that, call it a fumble, and the game's over. And I think Jordan Poyer did a great job. He knew exactly what was happening. He waited until he got back up to strip that ball, punch the ball out. And I think you could tell on the sideline he was furious that wasn't overturned. But I mean, they held through. They got pressure on Phillip Rivers, and he had to throw it away. The next two throws were just, no one was open. He just threw it out of bounds. And then it came down to a Hail Mary, which he couldn't even get the ball to the end zone, which I was expecting because it's Phillip Rivers. But
I think another thing too that a lot of people have kind of talked about is arguably one of the best kickers in the NFL, Rodrigo Blankenship, missing like a 35-yard field goal.
Yeah, that was huge.
And the game ended it was a 3-point game.
I think a lot of people forgot about that. I forgot about that until after the game. I was like, I forgot that he clonked that one off the upright.
One of the most consistent kickers in the NFL this year.
Yep.
And he doinked one off the upright. Like, that could have changed the entire game as well. Yeah. So, but
and then the 54-yarder from Tyler Bass, that was the difference too. So
oh, and when he flexed on everybody, oh, that fired me up. That dude has like the muscle definition of me, and that's like me going out there and flexing on an entire 53-man roster. That was awesome.
All right, well, there's your wild card weekend recap. 4 road teams on their way to the divisional round. You got Kansas City and Green Bay, the 2 1 seeds, waiting in the wings for this weekend. So let's get right to it, Connor. We're going to go with our very early predictions. We're just going to kind of throw out our initial thoughts, predictions on scores for the game. We'll get more in depth on Friday. But here we go, Connor. Run me through all 4 of them, just back to back to back. Stick it up. Give me your thoughts and your score for all 4 divisional games.
I will just segue with Buffalo and Baltimore. Very early prediction. I'll just go score and team for now. We can dive into it a little bit. I'm going 34-27 Buffalo. Then Cleveland and Kansas City. I am going 32-28 Kansas City. Next game is Green Bay versus LA Rams. I am going 24-20 Green Bay. And for the final one, Tampa Bay versus New Orleans, I am going 48-44 Tampa Bay.
Okay. So what are your thoughts on Buff and Baltimore real quick? Just give me a little recap of all of them.
So I still like Buffalo a lot in this matchup, and that's not just the homer opinion, but Baltimore does have a solid defense, and they play a lot of man-to-man coverage. They like to bring pressure, but Allen is playing at another level this year. And to me, it's like Mahomes 1A, Allen 1B right now. And it's the Mahomes effect. So it's like, how can you count Josh Allen out right now with the way that he's playing, the level he's playing at? Just because his first 2 years weren't great, I don't care about that. He's playing on a Mahomes level right now. But what gives me confidence is the other top defenses that he's shredded this year. How about Miami, the Rams, Pittsburgh, Seattle? The list goes on. It's favorable for Baltimore just because Buffalo struggles at containing mobile quarterbacks and being able to shut down top tight ends like Mark Andrews. But I'm still taking Buffalo. The offense is going to look a little bit more one-dimensional with Zach Moss being out, but I still like Buffalo in this matchup.
All right.
So you want to give your thoughts, or am I just going to keep running down?
Keep running down all of them.
All right. So Cleveland and Kansas City. I said I like Kansas City in this one. And personally, right now, I think this could be it could be a shootout. I'm praying for a shootout. But I've been saying shootout like multiple times this year whenever we're trying to predict games, which is why I mean, you could say 32-28 could be a shootout, but it's not. I'm praying for a high-scoring game, but I don't know. But the Cleveland offense is hot right now, especially with the two-headed monster at running back that they have. Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt are just a lethal combo. Kansas City has also gave up the most yards per game for a team who made the playoffs in the 12th worst overall in terms of rushing yards per game. So it could be a big day for Chubb and Hunt, and that's what is kind of making me lean towards kind of like a closer shootout game. But that number also surprised me a little bit because you think teams that play the Chiefs, they wouldn't necessarily use the run game a lot because they'd be playing from behind. Mm-hmm. So I was actually a little shocked to see that. But anyway, I'm taking Kansas City for now. Predictions could change by Friday. So Green Bay and the Rams. Right now, until I figure out what the quarterback situation is going to look like it's easy to pick Green Bay right now. But I think if you have a healthy Jared Goff, I think the Rams actually contend to beat Green Bay, because I think if there's one defense in the league that can shut down, Aaron squared in Aaron Rodgers and Aaron Jones and then Devontae Adams, I think it's absolutely the LA defense. And the thing that just scares me is just their inconsistency on the offensive side of the ball. And then you add in two banged up quarterbacks. I mean, yeah, you got Cam Akers finally hitting stride now, really kind of trying to cement himself as an RB1, because there's been a question mark at that position all year for the Rams. But I think in terms of being able to shut down the Green Bay offense, I think the Rams are probably one of the best defenses in the league to do it. But right now, with the uncertainty at quarterback and the inconsistency issues that the Rams have had, I'm going 24-20 Green Bay. And then the last one, this one, I wholeheartedly think that it's going to be a shootout. We're going to see both teams in the 40s. I like Tampa Bay a lot right now because their offense is hot, but the defense scares me. And Heineke already talked about it. He looked like a stud against them last week. And if they're going to have trouble with quarterbacks that can run a little bit, I'd also expect to see a heavy dose of packages with Taysom Hill under center. So I would not be surprised to see that. But I like Tampa Bay, but at the same time too, like right now it's so early. I also want to take New Orleans, but right now for my early prediction, I'm going 48-44 Tampa.
All right. Those are Connor's picks for divisional early picks. We're going to sift through this more on Friday, but that's what we got for now. So I'll give you what I got. All right, here we go. Buffalo hosting Baltimore, the 2 and the 5 seed. Connor, I'm all in on Buffalo in this story and getting a shot at Kansas City in the AFC title game. The Bills Mafia, Buffalo rising up, finally getting over that hump and not only having one playoff win, but turning it into the two, maybe into three, and finding a Super Bowl appearance again. Right now, on a Tuesday, I still like Buffalo, but I have one sidebar. And I said this to you earlier. Buffalo has become very, very dependent on Josh Allen. The plays he made versus Indy is the sole reason why Buffalo survived that game. And it's why they survived in several games this year. You know, simply they got beat up in the trenches and lost the game at the line of scrimmage against Indianapolis. They could not stop the run. They couldn't run the ball themselves. If they're going to beat Baltimore, they have to keep up with Baltimore's run game. They have to be able to run the ball efficiently and pick up first downs late in the game. They may have a lead where they're going to need to run the ball, get a first down, and seal the game. The more you miss on that, the more chances Lamar Jackson will have. And right now, the Baltimore Ravens are one of the hottest teams in football, winning the last 5 games of the regular season and then winning in Tennessee last weekend. You, you can't make Josh Allen make any more crazy plays. You know, that Superman action, it can only last so long this deep in the playoffs. They have to be able to run the ball a little bit. So right now, I still have Buffalo winning 24-21. It's going to be another one of those high blood pressure down to the last minute games for you, Connor. I think I'm sorry. You're not going to get a break from your heart for a week, but that's how I'm feeling right now as on Tuesday. As we go to Cleveland and Kansas City, after Sunday, Cleveland scares me a little bit. They've grown up, they've matured tremendously, not only in this entire season and over the course of the last year with Kevin Stefanski, but in the last 2 weeks. Why? They haven't had practice. They were without Kevin Stefanski and several other coaches and going to Pittsburgh and dominate. You know, as we said it earlier, bunch of kids get the house for the weekend. Dad's not home. Mom's not home. They not only don't mess everything up, they clean it up. They've matured. You know, Kansas City has been shaky. They were shaky in December. They did not look like the team they were the first couple months. You know, they've also had a week off. There's a little bit of rustiness there could be coming to play here. We've seen these teams that get a bye that struggle a little bit, especially right off the gate. You know, they don't have the momentum that Cleveland has. That's red flag number one. And if we look at the history of the NFL playoffs, that's a red flag to start with. A green flag, though, Connor, is Andy Reid with an extra week to prepare. Eric Bieniemy with an extra week to prepare. This could go one of two ways. Kansas City can come out prepared as all hell. And they shut Cleveland down early and get some scores and go up big. And Cleveland is going to have no chance of coming back because they rely so much on the run game. Or two, Cleveland comes out swinging like they did at Pittsburgh. They get Kansas City on their heels after a week off and rough football for a month. Kansas City has to come back like they did all last postseason. They had to come back from down 10 in all 3 of their playoff games last year. I don't know if they can keep that up. History tells me they come back, but it won't be easy. So in this case, I have Cleveland still covering the plus 10 spread. I got to go with Kansas City 34, Cleveland 26. I don't think it's going to be a walkover game for Kansas City by any means. Let's move on to the Green Bay and LA Rams game. Green Bay's offense has a clear edge on the Rams offense right now at the moment. The QB situation is sketchy. If Wolford plays, Green Bay will throw things at him that he hasn't seen. If Goff plays, they will push the run, which worked against Seattle, who was fifth against the run, and they ran all over him with a rookie running back in Cam Akers. Green Bay's 13th against the run. If they can keep that run going and keep Goff to a minimum, LA is going to have a much better chance to win this game. If they can run the ball well, not make Goff throw it so much without a thumb, they'll have the edge, and their defense is so good, as you mentioned, they'll be good enough to keep Green Bay stagnant on offense and keep it a low-scoring game. If it becomes a shootout, if Green Bay starts scoring and they get up ahead, it's Green Bay all the way, and they'll run away with it. But, if Green Bay can find pressure to get on the quarterback, stop the run, Green Bay with this offense and the Rodgers-Adams connection, I think it's too much. So right now I have Green Bay winning 28-17 in Lambeau to move on to the NFC title game. Rodgers getting just one more shot, maybe one more shot at a conference title. Last one, Tampa Bay, New Orleans, which will shift into what will be our last call. the hardest thing to do in sports, Connor, is to beat a team 3 times in a season, especially a division rival. Um, and when your team is loaded on offense with Tom Brady at quarterback, it's a ticking time bomb that we've also seen explode at times this season. Not as much as we thought, but it has at times. Antonio Brown is coming to his own in this offense, which is scary for the New Orleans defense. New Orleans looked bad last week against Chicago. They couldn't capitalize and blow that game open, which is what they needed to do. Right now, I think you have to go with the hot hand. You have to go with Tom Brady in January. And I can't see how this Tampa Bay team could possibly lose to a divisional rival with the roster they have for the third time after being blown out by 30 the last time. Simply to put it, Connor, I'm ready for an Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady NFC title game. We've never been able to see it. We've never been able to see them play in the playoffs before. I'm all for it. The 2 best quarterbacks in our generation. I'm all ready for it. I got Tampa Bay winning this one 38-31 in New Orleans, and kind of avenging the 2 losses they had in the regular season. And unfortunately, might be the last game we ever see Drew Brees play. So there's a big storyline going into it. Grandfather versus grandfather, Brady and Brees in NOLA. I think it's going to be incredible. So that's gonna lead us to the last call, Connor. If you want to add anything else in.
I'm gonna let you take it away. Take me to school.
All right, let's take you to school. This is the last call. Thank you again for joining us here on a Tuesday. So we've talked about it. This is why we spend so much time talking about the NFL playoffs. They're awesome. I don't know how else to describe it. It's like Christmas weekend after weekend. Christmas football. Being able to sit down and watch a triple header 2 days in a row. I couldn't ask for anything better. But the funny thing about football, a lot of times it's predictable. And not so much in what the spread of the game is or who we think's going to win. It's predictable because there will be upsets. There will be drama. There will be things that happen that make us claw our eyes out or that we still can't believe that happened the next day. And you know what? It's nothing new. A new year comes around. We tend to forget what happened the year before. We're shocked. We're in uproar. That was a catch. Oh my God, we're gonna lose to a wild card team. We're baffled that a number 6 seed comes into a divisional rival's home and scores 48 points to move on. That just happened on Sunday, and it happens every year. And this is why I'm going to give you some stats. In this century, since 2000, there have been 206 total playoff games played between the wild card, divisional, and conference title games. We're not including the Super Bowl in this. In those 206 games, Connor, 74 of them have been won by the road team, meaning the lower seed, the 6 over the 3, the 5 over the 4, or this year and possibly moving on, the 7 over the 2. 39 of those road wins have come in the wild card round out of 86 wild card games total. That's 45% of road teams have won in the wild card round since 2000. Very high number. 24 of those road wins have come in the divisional round. That's 24 out of 82 divisional games. That's 30% of road teams winning in the divisional round. The other 12 road wins have come in the conference title games. That's still 30% of conference title games have ended with a road team winning en route to the Super Bowl. We've had only 4 wildcard teams have made it to the Super Bowl victory, 2 of them being 6 seeds, Pittsburgh Steelers and the Green Bay Packers. But, to me, that's a pretty high percentage on all fronts for teams that come into the game as the underdog in Vegas. The money line is against them. Most analysts on the TV are against them. But here's the thing. They are typically the team with the most to prove or have the most freshness, most momentum in them. You think about it. A lot of the higher seeds may have a bye in the first round, or they may have rested their starters in weeks 16 and 17. While these lower seeded teams are fighting into a postseason spot until the last second, the last straw. They've built momentum. So speaking of those teams with first round buys, there have been 24 one and done teams in the playoffs that had a bye in this century. Since 2000, there have been 24 teams that had a bye in round one and then got beat at home in the divisional round. And speaking of all these wild card wins by road teams, not only last year, 3 of the 4 wild card games were won by a road team. There were 4 out of 6 wild card games this season won by the road team. There's so many memorable moments, ones that determine the outcomes and flip the percentage in the direction of either the road or the home team. So many little things you can pinpoint and be like, I remember that. Game-winning field goals as time expired. Overtime games, 22 overtime games in that span since 2000. There's the Tuck Rule game, Tom Brady in Oakland. There was Matt Hasselbeck in the 2003 playoffs against Green Bay. We want the ball and we're going to score. He said that mic'd up at midfield, first play of overtime, he throws a pick 6. You have Brady and Manning in the snow in the AFC title game. Donovan McNabb connecting on 4th and 26 to save the game and win in overtime. 4th and 26. Brady and Manning parts 2 and 3. Tony Romo's botched field goal snap. Dallas loses. The below freezing game in Lambeau. The Tim Tebow game to beat Pittsburgh in overtime. The Joe Flacco Hail Mary in Mile High. Sends it to overtime. They go on to win the Super Bowl. Andrew Luck's 30-point comeback. That saved a road team winning. Sherman and Crabtree in the end zone. Never forget that NFC title game in Seattle. Des Bryant no-catch game in Green Bay. Green Bay flopping on an onside kick. Seattle stays on top, and the NFC goes back to their second straight Super Bowl. Brady and Manning, parts 4 and 5. The no call in NOLA, and of course, the Minneapolis Miracle. Crazy things happen in the playoffs, things that will forever be burned in our memory, things that don't make sense, change the outcome of a game. What people don't tend to remember is the amount of times that wild card teams or the underdog teams on the road come in and win. So here's why I'll say there's going to be at least one road team that wins this weekend, and you're all going to flip out. No way that happened. I can't believe it. Well, it's going to happen. I just gave you all the stats. There's a 30% chance that there's going to be at least one, maybe 2 teams win on the road this week. I already said it. I think Tom Brady and Tampa Bay are going to win in New Orleans. New Orleans missed a chance at blowing out Chicago, even when it's the first time all year they've had Drew Brees, Alvin Kamara, and Michael Thomas all healthy, and they still only scored 21 points at home. Tom Brady is coming in as Tom Brady with a loaded roster against a divisional rival they've lost to twice already this year. It won't be a third. And I'm going to say this just because it's a gut feeling I have. I told you this, Connor, before the show, and I don't like the feeling I have, but I just got to be honest. I'm still sticking with Buffalo, but if I had to go with the second road team winning, it would be Baltimore in Buffalo, just based off what Baltimore has been able to do. So everyone hold on tight. There's going to be an upset this week, maybe 2. Road teams are going to win. These are the Road Warriors in the NFL playoffs. Last call.
Beautiful.
And you know why I love road teams winning? It's just it's the whole part of the underdog story. And why it's so close to home, Connor, too, is because in the 2 Super Bowl runs I saw the Giants have, that's what they did. They won all 3 games on the road in 2007, beating the undefeated Patriots in the Super Bowl. And then in 2011, they had one home game, and then they won the next 2 on the road again in Green Bay and San Francisco. So that stuff, it sticks with you. I really hope Buffalo wins, Connor, though. I don't want you to be upset that I said Baltimore could win. I'm just basing it off the history.
I'm down with it. It's definitely out of all the matchups, I think of the ones that we're feeling, like I definitely feel like it could go the other way with Baltimore and Buffalo because we talk about teams getting hot going into the playoffs all the time. I mean, and Baltimore's one of the hottest teams in the league right now. It's just the weapons that, I mean, Lamar Jackson himself is just essentially the entire offense.
Yeah.
But I'm going to get more in depth with it on Friday of why Buffalo can win, but also why Buffalo could lose. But still, I mean, if I'm the Bills, I still feel comfortable in our game plan. I would feel comfortable in the talent that they have, and also being able to outcoach all, Greg Roman and Harbaugh and all them. And I still think that even yes, Buffalo is the higher seed, but I still think that they're at an advantage. And I think also, if you're looking at it too from a national media standpoint, I would also say a lot of people probably favor the Ravens in this matchup too. And so, I mean, maybe that'll give Buffalo the underdog mentality back again. But I don't know. Everything's just gonna be weird. It's gonna be interesting to see how everything leads up to it and how everything plays out. So, but I mean, I'm not mad at it because I agree with it. I think if there's another matchup that I would have to say goes the other way, I would say it would be Baltimore and Buffalo.
Yeah. Well, maybe that was a bit of reverse psychology. Maybe that'll make Buffalo, because it's Buffalo, become the underdog heading into their home playoff game, and that'll give them the fuel to win that game. How do you feel about that?
Well, I don't think I could express to you how much I would love to see the Bills in an AFC Championship game.
It would make your year, wouldn't it?
However, if they lost, I probably wouldn't watch the Super Bowl.
You would watch a Super Bowl. Don't kid yourself. All right. Thanks for joining us on a Tuesday. Beyond the Box Score. Connor Priester, Cole Johnson. We got more for you on Friday. Heading into the divisional round, NFL playoffs. It's a lot of fun. Join us then. All right, Connor. So long, partner. And so long to all of you. We'll be back later this week. Have a good one.